Right then, episode 276 of the club, and the message today is you don't need bricks and mortar to to have a brand. You don't need to have a physical clinic. You don't need to have a place. The reason I'm saying this is because I've been talking to a lot of people recently, and they all kind of at least mention the fact that they would maybe like a clinic one day or haven't got a clinic. And I feel I can say this because I have got a clinic. So I think if I didn't have a clinic, you might be thinking, oh, how can you say it? So I think when you have kind of done something, you can actually have a bit more legitimacy to tell people not to do not to do it, um, because I think there's an impression that you need a building with your name on the door or on the wall to build a brand and to separate yourself out from your colleagues. And as I say, having done it, I realise you don't. I thought you did too. One of the reasons I did it, but you don't. And the reason I say that is because most or a lot of your brand building, a lot of the work in building a brand and to separate yourself out from your colleagues happens before people come and see you. So they don't even know you got a clinic. So a lot of this positioning happens before they've even seen you, and if you're doing it right. So if you're doing it right, you should be putting a lot of work in prior to people seeing you. If you're not putting a lot of work in to people before they've seen you, that means your prospects or the people who've inquired, then you're not doing a very good job of building your brand, period. So you need to be putting a lot of work in before people come and see you. And obviously they don't even know whether you've got a clinic or not. They've got an address, and they don't know if it's your clinic, if it's your hospital, or if you just Joe Blogs renting a room there. So what I've come to discover is that you can actually go a long way to building your personal brand whilst working at the hospital, and probably all the way. You probably never need to actually get your own place, but certainly you can go an awfully long way to building a brand, to building something that people will want to come and see, or someone who people will want to come and see, while still working at the hospital and renting a room just like anyone else does. So what you need if you want to build your own personal brand is you need a vision. You need a vision of what your practice looks like, what your practice stands for. You need to think about a statement or a philosophy that goes behind that vision that you can communicate. So something you can say in words that will capture what your brand stands for and what makes you stand apart from your colleagues. And as I've already said in the past, that when you stand apart from your colleagues, there might be people that you that don't resonate with what you do and what you say, and that's okay. You have to nail your colours to the mast and say, look, this is what I do. The one of the things that we stand by is where the aftercare is more important than the surgery. And it's all about the aftercare. It's all about looking after people, and some people would disagree with that. Some people would say, look, if you do a good job with the surgery, that's all you need to do. I'm not saying you don't need to do a good job with the surgery, but I'm saying that if you do a good job with the surgery and don't do a good job with the aftercare, then you can have an unhappy patient. Whereas if you do an average job with the surgery, and if we're honest with ourselves, most of us are doing average jobs with the surgery, but do a really good job with the aftercare, then you can get a happy or happier patient. And I think that's where the real difference that we can make from our colleagues lies. I think it's very hard to make a difference from our colleagues in the surgery or in the procedures that we perform, but I think there is a long way that we can separate ourselves in how we look after people around the procedures that we do. So it's about having that philosophy. Say that's my philosophy, it may not be your philosophy, but whatever it is, it's having a philosophy and a vision. And ideally, if you can put a statement along with that, like where the aftercare is more important than surgery, then the third thing you need to do is you need to communicate that as widely as possible. And what that means is you need to have a mechanism for attracting leads, which are people who are interested in the procedure that you do, but don't necessarily want to come for a consultation yet. So, and you need to have a mechanism to communicate with people over and above clinic letters and appointment reminders, which is what most doctors do. They do clinic letters and appointment reminders. That's all the patient ever hears from them about. So you need to get into the habit of getting in touch and getting in contact with patients and potential patients regularly. And it always looks a bit weird when you start, because they think, why are they sending me that stuff? But if you get into it and they get used to sending regular relevant information, so it has to be relevant. I'm not saying send stuff out to everybody on your database, because that might not be relevant. So you have to therefore look into segmenting your database, so you know who's on your database, who's had a procedure, who hasn't had a procedure, who's seen you at clinic, who hasn't seen you in clinic, and also what procedures they're interested in. So you can segment your database and send out relevant information to people on your database. So just small subsections of your database, but sending it out regularly to communicate your statement, your philosophy that separates you apart. And that is your brand. That is how you build a brand. Nowhere in that has a clinic or a bricks and mortar facility come in. Once you've got a bricks and mortar facility, you're paying for it 5 days a week. You potentially got full-time staff there. You've got to have people to answer the phones. You've got lighting, heating, the roof, because certainly where we are, it's a full repairing lease. The roof, the boiler, the toilets, the drainage, the painting of the front windows, the painting of the wall, the upkeep of the driveway, it's the garden. So, you know, it's basically hassle that you don't need. Quite frankly, you do not need it. We're very lucky that we've got this situation. Dentists, people like that, physios, they don't necessarily have that such an ability to have the kind of independent private practice in someone else's place, but we do. We have those private hospitals which will let us rent space from them. So I would suggest, if you've got a good private hospital that supports you and that gives you space to work, then you do not necessarily need a clinic. In fact, you do not even take the word necessarily out. You do not need a clinic. You do not need your own bricks and mortar. If you want to get your own bricks and mortar, I'm happy to talk about it. I don't regret it. I'm not saying I regret it, but I am saying that, you know, if someone asked me, I wouldn't particularly recommend you rush into it. I think it's something that you can certainly leave till quite late on in your journey of growing your private practice, and you can go a long way to growing your private practice without bricks and mortar, without a bricks and mortar clinic. But what you do need is you need a vision, you need a statement, you need a philosophy, and ideally a statement behind that philosophy, and you need a mechanism to regularly contact your database, to communicate this statement, to communicate this philosophy. You need to regularly communicate it out there to your database and also to the world. So that's social media and your social media channels and your podcasts or whatever it may be. But you need to get it out there regularly, and everything that you put out there needs to be thought about to whether you can get that philosophy or that statement in and behind it, so that people know what you stand for, so that people come and choose you rather than anyone else. You don't need bricks and mortar, trust me. But if you do, call me, and if you do want to call me, and I can happily talk about it. Okay, hope that's been helpful, and I will see you next week for episode 277.